a person told me that their Revo was not shifting into second, so not only are we going to go over how they shift, but also the mechanics of it. This is a 2-speed unit out of a Super Nitro RS4, but the internals are the same. So once I get my Allen wrenches, I will take this apart and show how it works. And maybe that'll give you more of an idea of, okay, how do I set it? It uses a spring, and basically it uses a spring and a set screw. The set screw presses up against the spring. The more the set screw presses up against the spring, the later the shift is going to be. The higher the RPMs it's going to have. There's a couple different kinds of shift setups. With Traxxas, it uses, well, I'll get this off and show. This is the set screw that actually locks it onto the let's get everything off of here. Oh crap, I didn't have to. No, I'd have to completely rebuild it, but oh no, I don't. And this one has a screw that sets it onto the shaft that it's on. And the T-Max and the Revo have something similar. But this is your second speed unit right here. And then you have the internals. And in the internal there is a little pin. What is going to happen is as this shaft spins with first gear engaged, this is going to spin faster and faster. And right here you have this little pawl. This little pawl will come out. Let me get something so I can demonstrate. But it will come out. Let's see if this will grab. See, like that. It'll come out like that and grab that pin until you slow down and it'll go back in. The tighter you set the set screw, which is the one that's usually off to the side, you have the center screw and then the one that's off to the side. You can tell that it's the set screw because it's actually sort of where it's put is you actually have to put the Allen wrench in at somewhat of an angle to get to it. The tighter you make this, the later it will shift. The looser you make it, the sooner it will shift, because with centrifugal force, if you loosen this, the weight of this little pawl is going to overcome the pressure of the spring, and it's going to engage against that pin, giving you second gear. That's why first gear has a one-way bearing. A one-way bearing means it can slide on the shaft one way, but not the other. See, like this. It'll spin this way. It'll spin this way, but not that way. It would be like that. And this is how it would actually engage and start turning. But this is for RS4 belt-driven vehicle. I have a T-Max, a Revo there and a T-Max there. You give me a second and I'll actually get them up. But that is how it works on Traxxas vehicles. With low-C vehicles, they actually use a shoe setup. There's two shoes on each side, and I wish I had my one of my TC3s apart because it uses the same method. But with these shoes, they're held together inside around the shaft. Again, we're the second speed unit, and it sort of works like a drum brake. If you know how a drum brake works, that's how these work. And they have shoes, and both are half of a circle. What holds them together are, again, set screws this time, but there are springs on these set screws. And that is what allows the shoes to come apart. the tighter you have those screws, they're on opposite sides of each other. So if you have a circle, you have a screw down here, then you have a screw up here, one going through each shoe into the other. Well, the tighter you have those springs, again, the tighter the spring, the higher the shift point. The more loose the spring, the lower the shift point. So like with these, the way I've set them up is, and there's also, and this really doesn't matter, but you can also set how far the shoe is away from the shift bell. That's what I would call it. I don't know the exact term. But you can't spin them independently because, like right here, you can't spin them independently, even though if this was out of here you could. You can't because they're meshed up against the clutch bell pinions. Well, because of that, it's not allowing these. But once this actually gets spinning, the one-way bearing allows them to spin independently. That's how that works. Like right now, as it's spinning, one gear is actually moving a little bit faster than the other. What the hell? Man. So that's how you set them. The tighter it is, the set screw, the tighter it is, the later it's going to kick in, the higher the RPMs it's going to kick in. Personally, for bashing, I like to kick in, I like to get on the, if I was to get it on the throttle 100%, I want it to accelerate for maybe about 2 seconds, and then second gear kick in. With a Revo, you have this little hole right here. Down in there you have to get, there's a little plastic, it's probably not going to be able to be shown on camera. Oh, wait. First you have to get there's a little cutout in the plastic gear, and then you have to hold the spur gear in place. You can get that set with the spur gear. Then you have to spin the whole vehicle front or back to get the set screw lined up. And that's where you go in. Right now mine's actually there. It's very hard to see it, but it's there. Now I can take a 2mm Allen wrench, put it down in there, be careful, and at that point you can spin that, tighten it, loosen it, and remember, if your Revo is not shifting, most likely it's too tight. So it's not going to get a shift. The Jado, the T-Max, the Revo, those are the main ones that have a second speed. The Savage actually has a 3-speed unit. Some Schumachers, like the Schumacher Menace, has a 3-speed. So you're going to have to set up for each one of those. When do you want the second and then third gear to kick in? First gear is going to give you acceleration. Second, mid-range. Third will be high-end. With these, first gear is pure acceleration, give you your wheelie, stuff like that. And then second gear is what gives you 45, 50 mile an hour with a Nitro. If we didn't have these, acceleration would be a little bit less unless you were to put a bigger motor in it. And then there is a way that you can lock out first gear and only run second. If you want to run a bigger motor, you'll lose out on first gear, but then you'll have more torque, more power. And with the Revo, you can actually get the big block package and put a big block in it. Mine had OS 30. My OS 30 is now in my Truggy. So I have Axial 32, but I have not found a vehicle that I can put the Axial 32 in without it breaking something in the driveline. That's how powerful that motor is. A lot of people said it's a 32RR1. It's the Axial's racing version. But so far, I've gone through HD steel spur gears. the mesh was set right. It's an incredibly torquey motor, and I've talked to other owners who had a good axial motor, and the 32RR1 is probably one of the most torquey motors of Nitro that there is. I love the LRP 32 Spec 4. Has monstrous power, but it just doesn't have the torque of the axial. I don't know why. I don't know what axial did, what King's motor, whatever it is. The same people that make the axial 32, basically axial motors, are the same people that make the motors for the Savage, the Star Series, K-Star, whatever, Nitro Star. So it's the same company that makes both. The biggest design flaw that I found with those motors is the cooling heads are so big that every time you go out, you have to retune, because any change in temperature is going to affect that motor, because the cooling head is so large. And yeah, that box is way up there, so I don't feel like reaching for it at the moment. But yeah, that's how shifting on these Nitros work. You either have a little pawl that will come in contact with a pin. It will go in like this, look like that, and then a shaft will go over this. I can't lose anything for this. Ah! Okay, here we go. This will just scream like a woman. Aha. And then first gear goes on like, now realize this is, oh crap, I actually put this on the wrong direction. Goes on that way. And then this goes on there like that. And as this shaft gets faster and faster, this will actually be fixed to the go, there it is. This will actually be fixed to the shaft. Like this right here, I'm actually fixing this to the shaft. So the pawl itself is affixed to the shaft. The part that spins with the centrifugal force, that, and then it ends up coming against the pin, which is right here. Once it gets up to a certain RPM, let's see if I can actually get it to engage. I can loosen it some. You'll actually hear it engage. It'll be a quick click. But because just by flicking it, I can't keep the RPM up. And I also don't want to break it. You hear that? And it stopped the shaft. That's because it was trying to, it hit that pin, and at that point that gear was engaged. And that's actually a little too loose for this, especially seeing I'm going to be running this thing pretty fast. But that's how they're set. There's always a spring attached to a set screw in some way. And the tighter you have that screw, the later it's going to shift. The looser the screw is, so if it's not shifting, you're going to want to get to the shift hole, the set screw for the shift, loosen it. Don't back it out until it comes out, because then you're going to, and if it comes out, you're going to have to rebuild it. And a lot of people don't know how to rebuild a transmission. Honestly, it's easy, but there are a lot of parts. A lot of shims, bearings, C-clips, E-clips, just all kind of different parts. But this is going to spin. This gear is going to spin this way, which in turn turns the shaft, which the second gear setup is connected to, but this can spin freely. And that's how, while you're in first gear, the gears don't strip, because this one's spinning freely. And then once this one kicks in, this one spins freely. And the second gear can spin in either direction, but when it's actually being driven, It's going to be like that. And the second gear is going to spin a little too. It's going to spin at a slower rate. And then once you reach a certain RPM of this shaft, not the motor, of the transmission shaft, the centrifugal force acting upon that little pawl in there is going to cause it to come out, overcome the pressure of the spring, causing it to come in contact with the pin, which is inside this outer bell, and it will go into second gear. And like I said, with the other ones, you have, just imagine this was cut in half. You would have a screw going this way and a screw going this way. And on that screw, let me see if I can sort of demonstrate it with the screws that I have right here. I have a screw and a bearing, but the bearing, the bearing is representing a spring. The spring is going to go over the screw, and then it's going to thread. It's going to go through one shoe and thread into the other. That is going to put the pressure to hold them together. And then again, with centrifugal force, they're going to come outwards and again press up against the outer clutch bell, the second gear clutch bell, and once it grabs completely, you're going to have second gear. The Losi LST has the shoe set up. Sometimes you actually have to clean it because somehow oil may get onto it. I've actually heard of that happening a lot with the Losi LST2. Simply, oil gets on it, and we all know if oil gets on brake shoes on a drum brake setup, you're not going to have enough friction. So that's the same concept here. If it gets oily in any way, you're going to have to take it off, clean it off. Sometimes with me, I'll even scuff up the clutch bell and the shoes so it'll grab a little tighter. And I'll even do that with the clutch for the engine itself. The clutch shoes and the clutch bell with a pinion on it. I'll take the clutch bell off. Let's see if I have one close to me. No, yeah, I think I do. I've got one in the bag somewhere. But basically, I would take the clutch bell, take it out, and on the inside, I would take a piece of sandpaper and scuff it up. And then I would take the shoes and scuff those up because at high temperatures, they will glaze over. And you want to get rid of that glazing effect. So yeah, that's how second gear works and third gear works on these RC vehicles. It's all about some type of shifting mechanism. Most of the time, I have seen the Traxxas setup that's also in HPI vehicles and stuff like that. That's the setup I've seen most of the time. Like the RS4 Nitros, they use that setup. They don't use the clutch shoes. But then you have Losi, Team Associated, stuff like that. They use the clutch shoe setup instead of the Pawl, the little finger that's going to come out and grab a hold of that pin. But as soon as the RPMs come down and that little pawl can't overcome the weight, it's going to come down. That pawl is also extremely hard steel because when it goes in, it hits hard. It's going to hit against that pin very hard, the pin on the outside of this. So when it hits, it's going to hit hard. I mean, it's not going to hit like, no, it's going to smack hard. And if it's soft metal, it's going to deform in some way, possibly break. And the pin also has to be a hardened steel pin. You can tell if it's hardened steel usually by some discoloring from heat treatment. Some steel, like stainless steel, cannot be heat treated. It has to be what's known as work hardened. You just have to use it until, as you use it more and more, the surface that you're using will get harder and harder. Same thing with some aluminum, titanium as well. But there's also a way you can harden it. So I'm going to end this here. I hope this helps people that are having problems with their Revo, their T-Max, whatever vehicle you have. It's not shifting. Okay, well, this is how they shift. So if you have any questions, please comment below. I'll try to walk you through whatever problem you're having. That's part of my channel is I help. If you comment, I'll help you through whatever problem you're having. There's always going to be haters. We all know that. I'm not going to get on that, but I hope this works. Thanks for watching. Peace. Okay, now this would be a LST2 or an LST2 or a team associated like my TC3s. This is the drum, which the second gear spur gear would be connected to this, the outside, and these are the internal shoes. But right now I'll talk about the LST2. LST2. With this, again, you have the drum, you have first gear, and then you have second gear. As you have the input shaft spinning faster and faster, the shoes are connected to the input shaft. The drum is not. So as this spins faster and faster, the centrifugal force will force these out to contact the drum. This is not to scale, this is just to get the idea across. And once these attach, that then attaches the second gear spur to the input shaft, and that's when the one-way bearing on first gear will start working. There will be no more power being sent through first gear. All the power from the Nitro motor will be sent to second gear. Now with the TC3s, there's actually some set screws right here. There's a long shaft. Well, not a long shaft, but a long way to get to these screws. And what these screws do is they push against the drive shaft, in this case, the center drive shaft. So you would have a screw in here. This is very rudimentary, I apologize, but... And what this would do is it would push the shoes closer to the drum, allowing it to touch a little sooner. The shoes won't have to travel as far. So far, I've noticed that between my two TC3s, the one that I've actually set the spacing between the shoe and the drum, it shifts a lot better. You don't notice a shift, but it happens. And yeah, you tighten these, which pushes the shoes outwards towards the drum. And then you also have this right here, this little cutout, which is the drum itself, so you can get to all these set screws. I'm not sure about the LST2 if it has these screws, but I do know with the Nitro TC3s, it has the set screws to set that, and then these two screws, if you loosen these shoes will hit the drum sooner, allowing second gear to kick in at a lower RPM. If you tighten these, it'll kick in at a higher RPM. Second gear will kick in at a higher RPM. So yeah, that's basically how they work compared to the other type, which is Traxxas, that has the Pawl. That you have that, and then you have the other part on the outside that I showed in the video previous to this, and you have the Pawl inside, and you also have that pin. And the pin would be about right here. Once it gets up to a certain RPM, the Pawl would come out and contact this pin. Sorry, my dog. Contacting that pin, and of course, again, you'd have second gear, spur gear right here, and that's how those will work. I know, a very rudimentary drawing. I actually put more time into this one, but I actually showed the parts for this kind. So yeah, that's how the shoe and drum type of second gear clutch works with like the LST2 and other vehicles.